evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight for the April AB 617 South Sacramento Floor and Steering Committee meeting. I just want to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the district's website, on the steering committee page, and on our YouTube channel. So with that, I'll pass it to the co-leads.
Okay, Bill, are we ready?
I am ready for
Okay.
the roll call. So Bishop Chris Baker. Jesus Cervantes.
Here.
Jesus is here. Spencer. Carlos.
Here.
Rhonda. Here. Tito. Gary Johansson.
Here.
Bill Knowlton. Lisa Lindsay.
Here.
John Rice. Taylor Sam.
Here.
Patricia Shelby.
I'm present.
Vincent Valdez. And Stephanie Williams. Okay, we do have a quorum. Okay. Our district staff. Roll call.
Sure. 1 second. Dr. Alberto Ayala,
Here.
Mark Watzenheiser,
Here.
Amy Roberts,
Good evening, everyone. I'm here.
Jaime Lemos,
Good evening, everybody here.
Janice Lamb Snyder,
Here.
Ed Yang.
Here.
Stephen DeAndrea.
Here.
And Stephen Bolton.
Here.
All right. And then for CARB staff, I want to take a minute and introduce, we have here tonight, Delty Reyes is with us. She's the director of the Office of Community Air Protection for the AB 617 program.
Everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I just also want to point out Jennifer Magana is here as well, who's our liaison for the Office of Community Air Protection to this community.
So as always, thank you so much for spending time, your valuable time with us this evening. We know your time is valuable, and this is a commitment that we have made together. So again, your time and your input and your expertise is invaluable. Speaking of invaluable, would like to thank Gary Johansson for his work on this committee. Today is his last meeting as a committee member. And so we wanted Pat and I to give our gratitude and our appreciation for your leadership and for your commitment. And you have been here from the beginning, and we cannot thank you enough. So, Pat?
Gary, I know I live in your community. I know that you have been committed for years in the North Laguna Creek area and beyond. I know you work in the school district with the children of our community, and you have great concerns and have expressed those over the many years. And I, again, want to thank you. Yes, you've been here from the beginning, and each one of us, there comes a time where we pass the baton. You are very gracious in your service and in your time and in your retirement. We're not saying resignation, but in your retirement from your service in this community and on this committee, I want to thank you very much on behalf of all of us who have served with you.
Thank you.
All right, Gary, not to put you on the spot, would you like to say anything? And if not, that's okay. But we didn't want to let the moment go by without giving you the floor.
No, I've enjoyed being part of the steering committee from the start. I just kind of miss the
the in-person meetings. And I just have too many things going on right now. I have to let something go.
We understand.
Certainly, life changes and priorities change. And again, thank you for your leadership and for your service.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Bill, I'm going to tell you quite honestly, I'm having to try to read this on a screen and it's very small.
The agenda.
Yeah, what I've got, I just zoomed it a little bit. All right, I'll just let you take.
There you go. There you go. Janice has helped us.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, just tonight, we're going to be having some rather deep discussions about the information that we have gotten back on our monitoring, where we've been for the benefit of all of us in review, but in fact, because we have so many new members as well. And the topic of where are we going at this point? It's time for us to start our discussions and re-envisioning. So I'm going to let the district dive into that because we've consumed quite a bit of time in a busy agenda. So if we could have Marina just go over how people can be able to make comment and be able to go over those things, please.
Of course. So some quick logistics for anyone new to Zoom. We have staff available. If you have any technology issues, just send an email to the email on the screen here, ab617clerk@airquality.org, and someone will contact you. You can also message the host or co-host in the chat box if you're having any technical trouble, and we'll reply to you and help you out. For agenda items that have steering committee discussion tonight, the co-leads will announce how we're doing that discussion. So if it's round robin, they'll call upon each member one by one to speak. And then after each member has spoken, then members of the public are welcome to raise their hand if they have additional questions or comments. For the public comment period, any discussion that's not round robin with the committee, if you'd like to speak, please just raise your virtual hand. And in order to do that, you can go down to reactions and you should see this little table here and click the raise hand button on the side. Or if you're on the phone, you can call in and press *9 and you'll hear an automatic voice saying that your hand is raised and to wait to be called upon. Then when you are called upon, click on the microphone icon on the lower left to unmute yourself. Or if you're on the phone, then just press *6. And you can also send any additional comments to ab67clerk@airquality.org during the public comment period, and then we'll read it out loud to the committee for anyone who's on the phone. And lastly, a reminder for the steering committee members, it's lovely to see your faces, but not required to have your camera on if you have any privacy concerns about your home being viewed publicly, especially since the meetings are recorded and posted online. So that is it for our Zoom logistics.
Bill, you're on.
I'm sorry. So next on the agenda is the approval of the previous meeting's notes. Those were sent out in your packet. We would entertain a motion to accept the meeting notes.
So moved.
We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Jesus, thank you.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstentions for absence? Motion carries. All right. Janice.
All right, so I'm taking down that slide because there'll be a blue screen. Just some quick district updates. I wanted to share with everyone that what the status is for our phase 3 mobile laboratory. We have been working with the school to develop an agreement, and we just heard back from them last week on an agreement that, they were good with. They just had a few questions for us. And so we're getting that back. And so we'll be getting, so that process is going through pretty quickly now. And so with that said, the district would like to start preparing for an unveiling of the mobile laboratory that is likely going to be scheduled, planned right now for the end of summer, probably beginning of fall. And so what we're hoping to do is to do some unveiling and then potentially even some broader efforts that the district's looking to do. And so with that, we'd like to start an invitation for steering, a couple of steering committee members who may want to join us in the planning process to help us plan for this event and really start to, get some of those ideas going. And so with that, I could take volunteers now, or you can email me later if you're interested. And so, yeah, so we just wanted to extend that invitation and start that process going.
Janice, I appreciate that. I know that the outreach subcommittee had also been trying to dedicate a few folks. So working in coordination with Rhonda would probably be the best.
Okay.
So that we can be able to, and we needed added members, but that way outreach is also in that component.
Perfect. Okay, that sounds wonderful. So Rhonda, I'll be in contact and maybe we can discuss a little bit more about, how we can move forward. Okay. That's all I had for district updates.
Well, that means I'm next, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that was fast. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you an update about what the outreach subcommittee's been doing since our last meeting. First of all, we completed our intake survey with the contractor, David Ennis of Innocence Creative Design. We selected him and we sent a letter out to the contender to let him know that he was not selected. That was sent out like a couple of weeks ago. And we received our first draft of the homepage and the other web pages. If you like, I'd like to give you a sneak preview, if you guys don't mind. Okay, let me go. I saved it at the bottom of my screen. Let's see. What is this? At least I thought I did. Okay, let's see. I always try to save stuff and then I can't find it. Okay, what's that? Okay. All right, I gotta go get it again, I guess. Oh boy, nope. If I saved it, where did it go? Okay. Huh. It's not Zoom, it's here. Well, I don't even know what that is. Okay, I cannot find it. So I have to try to, I'm gonna finish my report. When I find it, I'll let you know while I'm doing this. We do need volunteers to write language for various pages on the website. So anybody who's not already on our committee, please contact me if you want to write something. I need information too. I've already looped Mark and Janice in my emails now because I know you guys have a plethora of information. I need to get the right monitors link so that we can put the link to our monitors on our one of the pages. And I'm not sure which one that is. So if somebody can put it in the chat or call me later, let me know so we can make sure we have that. But we need writers for the resources for all the different pages. So just let me know. We just finalized the statement of work on all parties have signed. That would be myself, Pat, and David. We've all signed it last Monday. The total contract cost is $3,950. We got a $1,000 in-kind discount, so it would have been more. We did meet last Thursday with our subcommittee to go online with, I think there was about 3 or 4 of us online too. I think Taylor was there. Were you there, Jesus, or was it Juan? There was 3 of us, and we went through the website that he sent us and made edits and suggestions and so forth. And then then I sent all that to the contractor. Let's see. We submitted our first invoice to Macro Partnership today. I understand I didn't use the preferred invoice form, so I got that straightened up, and Dia sent me all the information I need, Bill. And tell her thank you. She was gracious enough to fill it out because I thought, oh gosh, I did it yesterday when I made time for it. I am booked solid until Monday.
Yeah.
So tell her I appreciate it. So Pat, that's all filled out, and I just got to figure out how to save it. And they want a contract, the signed contract. So I'll be sending that to you as soon as I figure out how to save it and send it to you. And they want a 1099. So we'll get that to you for the contractor. The first payment will be just before he starts the first phase. The first phase is due to start on Monday, May 1st. I don't know what day that is, but May 1st. Of 20%, which equals $790. The second payment is due at the end of phase 3 for the same amount, another 20%. And then the last payment is due at the end of the phase, that's at the end of phase 4 for the remaining balance of $22,370. And we also submitted our second invoice for payment for the cost of 3 Google domain names at $24 each. We bought saccleanair.com, saccleanair.net, and saccleanair.org. And let's see. And then we sent a letter to our contender, Che Perez of Sierra Blue Agency, a couple of weeks ago to let him know he wasn't selected. At the end of our last meeting on Thursday, we still want to figure out a way to have a box fan retrofit. So I was talking with Mark and Janice, and we thought if we could purchase gift cards and maybe conduct a survey to see how many people are interested, provide information about what it does, and see who's interested in making the retrofitted box fan. And out of those who respond, we'll give them a gift card so they can, and instructions on how to build and so forth. Then they can go ahead and get the gift card. We also thought that if they did build the fan, the retrofitted box fan, and submitted a picture, then they might get another portion of the gift card. So the gift card could be like $25 to start. And then if they submit a picture showing them with their finished built retrofitted fan, then we'll send them another $25. That would in essence pay for the fan. Okay. So we wanted to run that past you guys to see what you thought about it before you even think about how you want to vote on it. Stephanie brought up, I don't know if she's here tonight, but she brought up a good idea. I don't even know what the box retrofitted fan looks like. I don't even know how you build it. So we thought maybe somebody should give us a demonstration, maybe one of our meetings or a sidebar meeting or something. And then maybe we can have access so that we can build one and know what, and then use it. So before we just push it onto our community, then we can kind of know what it's all about and how it works and that type of thing. So those are our suggestions.
So Rhonda, after you make your report, let's let Earl Withcomb show you what one looks like. And I believe we might be able to also have someone from CARB tell us about their instruction packet that they have.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So Rhonda, go right ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Because we got an invitation to partner with, I think it's Adrian's team. They're going to have a workshop and they're going to build a bunch of these fans. But I didn't want to agree to anything until I came back to this committee to find out, where we stand and what we can do.
Rhonda, excuse me, Alberto has his hand up. You have a question?
Yes.
Yeah, no, not a question, Bill, but I also wanted to add we also have a partnership with Breathe California, the Sacramento chapter. And in the context of some of the work that we have to do for wildfire smoke impact preparedness, Breathe is also conducting workshops to do precisely what you're talking about, Rhonda. So I think just from, you know, the different things that Pat pointed out to, there is multiple opportunities here where if the committee wants to go in that direction, we could tap into existing resources and programs to help out.
Okay, well, we'll chat later. Okay. So I think that's all I have to add for now. So
Earl?
my question to the steering committee is, what do you think about the idea of having a survey to poll people to see who's interested in building a box fan that's retrofitted? And then when they respond, those who respond, I see he's showing up, Earl is showing up a fan, okay. And then we're only gonna buy a certain amount of gift cards. We figured like 25 to 50. So just to start off to see how this is gonna work. But what are your ideas and suggestions? I'm open, it's just a suggestion and we're open for ideas on how to make it work and how to perfect it.
So I have a question. So if the fan, let's say it costs $50,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so my only concern about doing the 25 and the 25 is that if people don't have the resources to do this. So, and again, just another thought, if we say we did a Home Depot card where you could buy these items and people that were interested, we could then just give them a $50 card. And then maybe, you know, you could do a drawing or something for the best looking one or whatever, you know, to make it fun. I just wouldn't want to be, if it's cost prohibitive for somebody, that there would be, you know, dangling, you know, the other half. So
Right.
Just a thought.
No, that sounds good. That's reasonable.
May I make a suggestion as well?
Mm-hmm.
This is Pat speaking. Let's talk to some of the people who've done it, and they may have already solved that issue, and might have a good idea about the resources as well. So if we do that with them as well, we can kind of eliminate what didn't work, and move right to kind of what works. So we're open with it. So
Okay, I know Vincent has shared information about people who have done it too. I don't see him here tonight.
Vincent is having technical difficulties. David is trying to help him get logged into the meeting.
Okay. So I know we have, I have talked to Vincent because he's made a bunch of them, but I'm open to talking to Alberto and I think it's Adrian too.
Yes, yeah, Adrian Snack, I think, was doing some of those. And Earl, did you have any comment about how it's worked that you know of?
My understanding is that United Latinos at one point constructed about 50 fans and then sent out a solicitation to their network saying they were available for free on a first come, first served basis. But I'm not exactly sure about that.
Okay.
There's several ways. One of the things is, if we give people the tools and they make it, or they have the capability to make it, then all liability lies there, as opposed to if one of us made it poorly and we caused a house fire. Don't want to do that.
Yeah, we want to avoid any liability issues.
So, okay, sounds good, Rhonda.
Okay.
I just want to thank you, Rhonda, for all the great work that you have done. The committee has done. It hasn't been easy. Our interview process, and I sat in as the note taker. I did not interview the applicants, but it was some rigorous interviewing that went on. And
rigorous and interesting.
Yes. as well as you drive a hard bargain when it comes to a contract too, girl. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your skills.
Oh, thank you so much. I was trying to save us some money because that contract was, because we ended up leaving out some things in our statement, in our
Right.
or in the scope of work that we wanted. And
Right.
the guy that we selected in the interview said, oh, that was not in the scope. I mean, he caught it right away. So
Right.
we needed it. So I said, oh Lord, this contract is going to cost an arm and a leg now. You know, it came back at like 5150 or something like that, or 6150. And I thought, I started saying, what do we need and what can we just start off with bare bones, you know, and just started slashing stuff. And then I consulted with other people that have IT information like Taylor. And he was in on the conversation to tell me, you don't need that, and you don't need this, you know. So we were able to slash it back down to get under our budget of 4,000 for us. So, but I appreciate, it was a team effort. I appreciate everybody that helped me with this, especially you, Taylor.
Yeah, you're welcome, Rhonda.
It's been a team process, and I appreciate everybody that's put in, and that's board members and community members who have Juan and Victoria who have been steadfast in giving back and participating in the meetings.
That's a team effort. Yeah,
that's right. I just want to point out to folks that Dildy, thank you, Reyes has put in the link that CARB has about the DIY tools to modify a box fan.
Oh, okay.
All right, so we have that link. So I thank you very much. Any other questions for Rhonda? No, but let me
add that the project starts on May 1st and it should be done by May 31st. And then we have a 5-day of testing it all out and everything after that. So we're almost there.
All right. And the goal is that we have this up and running so that we also, when the kickoff for our phase 3 monitor we have a fully active tool that's ready to help us with the outreach to the community about that as well. So thank you, Rhonda, for all that hard work. Looks like Vincent's coming in.
And Mark has a comment.
Okay.
Just a quick one. I think Rhonda also still had a question on the table. I just want to make sure the committee doesn't lose track of Rhonda's question, which was how many if you are going to go the gift card, just how many? So I didn't want to lose track of Rhonda's question to the committee.
Yes.
So cost per
yeah, we got to find out cost per and all of that first.
The cost is I already have the cost. I got Vincent shared a document with me, so I have that. It's $49.
So $50. Okay. So I guess the question on the table is, how many $50 gift cards do we want to authorize the committee to offer? Is that the question on the table?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Will this be something that we can culminate at perhaps having a drawing or something at the phase 3 mobile event, perhaps, that people could get into a drawing for?
A drawing rather than
and perhaps an illustration of how it works. So anyway, just lots of ideas. I'm just throwing out the ideas. I'm not sure that we need to finalize that at the moment, but Vincent has his hand up as well.
Yes, Vincent.
Hi, everyone. It took me a little while to get on, but I'm on.
Welcome.
Yes, I guess I jumped right into the $50 gift card. I'm not in favor of the $50 gift card.
No? And
No.
tell us why.
Because when we built them, it takes a little more than just give somebody a gift card, because you have to order the MERV filters and construct them. And so I don't know if it's not possible for us to work with some organizations in the community and have a workshop outreach event, and then example, just like Pat was saying, of how to put them together, or let them put them together before they go home. Something like that.
A workshop. We did talk about that at our meeting. Okay. Well, we'll have to work out the details and then determine our final decision on that. But in terms of the money, though, I still need to know, like, 50, 25 of these would cost $12.50.
Rhonda, how many would you want?
I'm thinking 50 would be a nice number of people that do it.
Do you think we'd have that much interest?
We can do this more than once too.
We could, that's why I was saying we could start with 25,
Okay.
50, that's $12.50, and then see how it goes, and then do another 25, 50 gift cards or something like that.
Okay. So I
That way
would,
we can kind of gauge it by the response we get.
so I would make a motion to authorize Rhonda to spend up to $1,250 on 25 fans, however they're put together, meaning Vincent's ideas, I think, is a good one, to have a workshop and everybody gets together and does this. It'd be a fun event.
That would be nice.
So I would say 12, again, that $1,250 plus $200 for snacks for that event if you in fact do that.
Okay.
So my motion would be $1,450 including the event. And if we want to have the event at the Mac Road Partnership or at the community center, you can certainly do that.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second for the motion?
I second.
Second from Lisa Lindsay. Any other discussion about that now that we? Welcome, Richard. How are you tonight?
I'm
All
well,
right.
thank you. My apologies for being late. I was in the
No.
EPA Region 9 Community Check-in. My apologies.
No worries. Glad to have you.
Don't worry, we've all had a bit of a struggle tonight. So welcome though. And Richard is coming on as Vincent's alternate for United Latinos. Welcome. All right, so are we ready to vote on that motion? All in favor? Can we go? Bill, could you please ask for folks to raise their hand or to voice vote through the roll?
Let me grab my, where's my list? Hold on one second.
And Vincent,
All right.
and Vincent has added to the list.
I'm sorry, and Vincent's added. Okay.
Yes.
Jesus Cervantes,
Yes or no? Okay, he's saying yes.
Carlos,
Yes for me.
Rhonda,
Of course, yes.
I thought you'd say that. Gary Johansson,
Yes.
Bill Knowlton, yes. Lisa Lindsay,
Yes.
Taylor Sam,
Yes.
Patricia Shelby,
Yes.
Vincent Valdez.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
You're welcome.
Hey,
Thank
Bill,
Yeah.
just want to make mention Spencer is also on.
I'm sorry.
Spencer?
I'm a yes, Bill.
Okay.
Keep
Wait a minute.
skipping me,
Mr.
but
Everly?
yes.
Yes.
Oh, you came, okay. I didn't have you marked. I'm sorry.
Sorry we missed you, Spencer. So
All
add
right.
a vote. All
I
right,
apologize. Spencer's a yes.
all right.
Okay.
And still unanimous. All
Still
right.
unanimous. Thank goodness for Spencer. He didn't change the unan.
All right.
Let's move. We're running out of time.
Okay. I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Rhonda.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, next up on our agenda is?
Did we have any mention of the letter of support letter, the outreach
No,
committee?
Vincent, that's gonna come at the end of the meeting, please. So let's go ahead and move what's on the agenda.
Okay, I just wanted to give kudos to the outreach committee.
Yep, I do too, but we'll bring that back at the end. Go ahead.
Everyone, thank you. So we're just going to take a few minutes here, really sort of as a primer for both the data we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, and also then the discussion that the committee will be having in end about the next step. So it's sort of a little bit of a quick snapshot of where we've been and where we headed. And before they advance the slide, though, I just want to quickly acknowledge the great work that Rhonda and the entire outreach subcommittee has been doing. I had a chance to see the pre-version of the webpage, and I think there's a great use of the district funds that are being provided to the outreach committee and the discussions even that we just had. So I think there's some great movement going from the outreach committee. So thank you all. Next slide, please. So just as a quick recap, so our community here in South Sacramento, Florida is one of 15 communities across the state. Really with the, every community that was been selected as part of the AB 617, I'm gonna say official program, just because there's a lot of other communities that are benefiting from the work that's happening in all the 15 communities, even if they're not selected yet. But one of the nice things and one of the good choices here, the way that this program is set up, is each community is unique. The people are unique, the sources of pollution and the solutions that are being looked at are going to vary from area to area, whether you're right next to a port or a major industrial sector, or if you're just in the middle of a more just general urban environment like here in Sacramento. But really the main goal that everyone's looking at is healthy air. So just as a quick high-level recap, both for our existing members and also our new members and the community that's joining us tonight. So going back when we first kicked it off here in 2019, the committee worked very heavily on the Community Air Monitoring Plan, or the CAMP. As part of that, we also did an initial deployment of what we call the phase 1 or 21 portable sensors throughout the community. And so we've been getting a lot of great data from those. In 2020, we were working on the CAMP implementation, including the phase 2 monitoring started. And again, the phase 2 monitoring was to supplement what was already happening from the portable sensors. So this included canister sampling and collecting specific data that we were sending off to labs for analysis, both on metals and VOCs and looking at the toxics. And the steering committee has continued to provide us in guidance in 2021 for selection of incentive projects. So thank you all that have participated in that the last couple of years, and that's going to be ongoing, where there's that opportunity to continue providing feedback on the incentive funding, at least some of the incentive funding that the district has access to for 617. We've wrapped up the phase 2 monitoring. There's also, and I think this was even mentioned in the chat a moment ago, but Amy and her team from Stationary Source Division here at the district have been working on their supplemental environmental project program, which is helping to fund some penalty money back into projects in the community. And now that we're here in 2022, as we talked about, we're getting ready late summer, early fall of 2022, we'll be having the mobile lab for the phase 3 monitoring. We're going to be giving a detailed report on data here in just a moment. And then we've already heard from the great work on the outreach group on their outreach, the website they're working on. And so now it's time to start thinking about, well, what are some local strategies? What partnerships do we want to be forming as we move forward? And throughout all this, as well, I should say, the district is also doing enhanced enforcement, broader incentive projects as well, all trying to get toward that goal of healthy air for our community. So just as a very high level, don't worry if you can't read each of these flyers, we do have them on our website as well, but we aren't alone in this fight. There are a lot of other efforts going on. So for example, there is the programs such as the snack project going on that Valley Vision has going there. We also, if you want to go ahead and just advance the next couple of things, we are doing a project in combination with the city of Sacramento, where we're going to be putting even more of these portable sensors throughout the city of Sacramento, but with a key focus on those areas that have been most impacted and left behind over time, including schools. And, again, partnerships with EPA, Sacramento County Public Health. They just got some new funding coming forward as part of opportunities for monitoring the California climate investments, to name just some of the different projects going on. Valley Vision's got projects. United Latinos has been doing a lot of great monitoring going on in the area. So there are just all these partners, all these opportunities going on in our community, bringing more information down to that public level. So as you're just listening, coming up here in just a moment to the data analysis we're going to be talking about. And then as you head into the discussion at the end of the meeting, just sort of on next steps, just sort of a quick look at that roadmap, if you will. We've been doing the camp implementation. So we will be starting on the phase 3 monitoring. There will be more data that comes in with that. It's probably just a quick and easy point to mention and point out, both the data that we've already been collecting, everything is available on our website, including samples on how to read the data that's been coming in. We've had that data up there for the last several months. As soon as data was coming in, we've had that posted to our website. That will continue to be up there and available as we get in more data into the future. We'll have that available so that anyone else that's interested in the citizen science side of it and wants to look at the data, including the raw data, that's all there and available. The outreach subcommittee is already doing great work about building awareness, developing that great website. Again, where do the district initiatives sort of fit in? These are things that are already going on. So this is the enhanced enforcement. It's the incentive projects that Jaime and Rafe have talked about in the past and will be continuing going forward. The supplemental environmental program, just other opportunities that we as a district bring forward to the community. And so really, as we move forward then, and as you think about, as you listen to the data, it's what are going to be some local strategies? What are the next steps and how do we get there?
Okay.
So if anyone has any questions, otherwise this is really intended more as like a quick recap of where we've been and some areas on going forward. And if there aren't any questions now, of course, there'll be an opportunity at the end. And otherwise, I'd probably rather leave a lot of time for data and any questions that may come up there.
Yeah, we'll end up coming back to some of the discussion on this. So let's go ahead and move forward.
All right, the data, what we've all been waiting for. So before I hand it over to my colleagues, Stephen Bolton and Stephen DeAndrea, I just want to do some recap on the strategies that we deployed in South Sacramento, Florin community. As you can recall, we have a 3-phase strategy in our community air monitoring, and we started that our first phase in June of 2019, where we deployed sensors out into the community to start getting that data, to start creating that awareness. And we finished our phase 2 monitoring just this last November in 2021. So when we finished our phase 1 monitoring data, we're really moving into phase 2, or we moved into phase 2 and we're going into phase 3. And the data, the monitoring equipment, the data that we're collecting are all pretty standardized methods that that many academics, many air quality agencies across the nation, across the world are really using. And that's really important because we want to be able to compare our data with other areas as well across, across California, across the nation, across the world. And so that's something that I think our phase 2 and our phase 3 data is really going to help us look at that information consistently across the region. And so with that, our phase 3, as we've reiterated many times, is going to start beginning in 2022. And with that, I'm just going to recap the last time we came to the steering committee with some data. And so what you see on the map, on the slide here, is a map of our 6 phase 2 monitoring sites. But before I go into that, the portable sensor information data that we had looked at before, all of the sites showed similar levels of fine particulate matter, so particulate matter 2.5. In our priority area 1, where we have our VFW post and our station 56, we saw out of all of the 6 sites, that priority area 1 was where we saw the higher concentrations than the other 4 sites. Priority area 2, which is the blue area, Impact Church, is also where we saw higher toxic VOC concentrations among the 6 sites that that we monitored for in phase 2. And so that's what we brought last time before we go into the updated data that we had collected since. And then with that, the last time we shared, like I had mentioned, we were working with the school to locate, to place a mobile air monitor, mobile laboratory at the Fern-Bacon Middle School. That's the red star that you see here on the phase 1 or priority area 1 area. Okay, with that, I am going to hand it over to my colleague Stephen Bolton and let him introduce himself and share some of the data with us all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Bolton, as Janice said. It's my first time speaking with you guys, so it's a pleasure to be here and talking with you about the data. So I'll beginning with phase 1, looking at our portable sensors, as Janice said, looking at PM 2.5. And unless Janice or Mark or David have any objections, I think it would be better to answer questions as we go on each slide, just so you guys don't forget your questions and so we can see the graphs. So if there's no objections to that, please ask your questions as we go and let me know. So for phase 1, looking at the data, we looked at January 2020 through February 2022. So we looked at a full 2 years of data to show you a complete seasonality over the course of 2 years and give you near present results. So next slide, Janice. Just on the note on the other slide, although we did look at only until February, the phase 1 monitors are still up and running. We just looked at through February based on when we start our analysis, but the phase 1 monitors are still up and running and will continue to collect data even as we move into phase 3. So for the graphic here, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but it's just to give you a brief reminder as to what we're looking at here in phase 1. So you can see just some common small objects, grains of sand, human hair. So we're looking at here in phase 1 of the small pink particles, which you can see are just a fraction of the size of the human hair. And these ones are a particular concern, these particles less than 2.5 microns, because they're small enough to travel deeper and penetrate deeper, into the body, which can increase risk for both acute and chronic illness. So this particulate matter is of concern. PM 2.5 is a large category. It contains many different compounds and as such has many different sources. 2 of those sub-compounds that we'll be looking at will be toxic metals and black carbon, which will come in phase 2. Go to the next slide, Janice. So for an overview of phase 1, as you can see on the map to the left, we have a showing of all 21 sensors deployed throughout the community. You can see most of them are within their priority areas, but there are 4 outside of them. And on the following slides, I'll be calling those the non-priority area. And those are just for reference to compare the total community, even outside the priority areas. As I mentioned, we'll be looking at 2 years of data. And even as we move into phase 3, it's important to note these phase 1 monitors are extremely important because they do help increase air quality awareness. These monitors allow ease of access to the data. The public can access online and see real time how their community looks. And it'll keep everyone engaged and informed as to air quality in your community. And as a part of the camp, it's really important to really engage the community and keep them informed, keep the outreach going, the education up for air quality. So these phase 1 monitors will continue to keep capturing data as they're very vital for increasing air quality awareness. And just a final note, both for the public and for ourselves, these are a screening tool, so they're great for just indicating areas that are high, medium, low, so that both ourselves and the public can keep an eye on areas or sites that may need further focus. So the first graph for you guys, this is an AQI comparison over the sites. So one thing to note before we dive into the data itself, Bowling Green Park and Valley High Laguna Library were excluded from this phase 1 data update. There was equipment error over the course of the 2 years that caused large chunks of data to be missing or large chunks of the data to be skewed, either high or low. So those monitors were excluded from this analysis. And I also do want to note that there were fire impacts. I'm not sure if you guys can see them with the zoom bar kind of going across the bottom, at least on my screen it is, but we did remove the dates for the fires. We obviously know that these cause great pollution and great harm to air quality, but we are really trying to compare daily AQI between sites without exceptional events over the course of many weeks to months. So those were excluded from this analysis. So looking at the full 2 years of data, as you can see, each site is relatively similar to one another, as well as the priority areas. There is no one site that necessarily stands out as being significantly high. If anything, area 3 is actually the standout as being quite a bit lower than the others. But overall, there really isn't a single site that is shown to be much higher than the others. And overall, we're looking at 666 days of data. So each site has between about 2 to 4% of those days within the unhealthy for sensitive groups or higher. Now, there were a few times where the days did hit unhealthy. That actually happened on a single day, January 15th of 2022, where the air quality got just a percentage or two higher than the threshold that is cause for unhealthy. We don't know what caused this, but it could be anything from just a local fire that caused these to spike a little bit. But overall, the takeaway from this one is that the sites are all relatively similar to each other. Now, to put a little more into context, we did compare these sites over to our monitors over in Del Paso Manor, which, just for reference, is east of Sacramento in the Arden Arcade residential area. So we compared it to 2 monitors there, a Clarity, similar to the AB617 sites, as well as a more advanced band monitor. Now, I do want to note the date at the top. We only compared these from January 2020 through September of 2021. The Del Paso Manor Clarity was taken offline in September so that it can get updated with a newer model, but that has not been put into place so that data can be relayed back. So the data was missing since September, and we haven't been able to update it. So we're looking at January through September. And again, similar to the last graph, all the sites are sticking relatively similar to each other. And overall, Del Paso Manor is at the same level. So the biggest takeaway from this is that, the sites and areas are similar to each other, and overall, the community seems to be at a similar level to the greater Sacramento region as well.
I had a question.
Yes.
I was looking at these slides and I'm looking at the red tip where DPM, BAM, and the other slides had red tips as all. Does that mean unhealthy air?
Yes.
So why isn't it unhealthy for DPM Clarity way up there at 12?
So a few things that could cause that. Again, those are number of days. And again, these are just thresholds, the ranges. So being unhealthy for sensitive groups, it'd be between 35.5 micrograms per cubic meter up to 55.4. So there is a big range. Any of these sites that fell even just a microgram below or above would have missed the cut. So there is a day-by-day graph that'll be coming up that'll give you a little more clarity as to where these sites all landed, because there are quite a few days that could have just missed the threshold that would have caused this to miss. So on a lot of these sites, they were like that.
All right, thanks. And one more question. Area 1, Station 56 had problems, and that was it skewed too high or skewed low?
That would be for phase 2, and Bowling Green Park was the one that was skewed, and it was taken offline for a bit because it was missing data, and so they put it back online, and the calibration factor was off when it was put back online. So for about 2 to 3 months, it was measuring consistently about 3 to 4 times higher than all the other sites, even though they're right next to each other. So it got taken offline again, but by that time, most of the data wasn't representative of enough to be put on these slides. So,
and which facility are you speaking of now?
That was Bowling Green Park.
Okay.
And Stephen, if I may just add real quick, because the portable analyzers, once they come to us, we're sort of with whatever their calibration is. So when we identified there was a problem, we did ship it back off. But it's just a matter of, when they're off, being shipped back to the company to get replacements. If you end up with a big lag time, they wouldn't be representing in terms of like days because they're missing chunks of time.
Thanks.
This is Richard. I have my hand up. May I ask a question? I'm sorry about the previous slide.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Just trying to understand it. Forgive me, I'm the new guy in town here. So I might understand based on what I'm seeing here that from January 20th to September 21, taking a look, for example, at APM Clarity, oh, I'm sorry, let's take a look at Nicholas, that for 8 total days out of that 1 year and 9 month period, they had unhealthy for sensitive groups. And for the rest of the time during that year and 3/4, there was something not measurable. Can you help to explain what your total number of days versus the areas versus the findings are?
Sure. Stephen, if you don't mind, maybe I'll grab this one real quick. So great question, Richard. Basically, if you look at the chart in the upper right-hand corner, it's letting you know if we had any hazardous days, very unhealthy for sensitive groups, or then if you're down to the moderate or good areas, that's better information. So almost all these bars, with the exception of that 1 day for Arden Del Paso, where it was the federal monitor of the BAM, that's red. We had, you are correct, that 8 days were in the unhealthy for sensitive groups. The other days would have been moderate or good. So basically, because the unhealthy for sensitive groups is where we start getting worried for the public, because unhealthy for sensitive groups are kids, people with health problems, the elderly. We're flagging those days or worse are being reflected on this chart.
Which is kind of what I figured. So am I to presume then with the statement that and I guess what I'm trying to figure out here is January 20th, or that whole period where we had our wildfires, we removed that data. Am I reading this correctly?
You are correct.
Okay. Is there a particular reason why we removed that data from as far as wildfires are concerned? Because that was a pretty long period, pretty unhealthy. Is it because we presume it is a single area of concern that can be that can be easily explained? Help me out here.
You are correct, Richard, on that. So let me back up 1 second. Even though we aren't reflecting in this analysis the wildfire data, any data even during wildfires is on our website. So all the data is still there. So but from an analysis standpoint, we'd ask the staff not to, if you also, without wildfires, you can sort of get a better idea of what is the day-to-day situation going on in the community versus like the wildfires, which they're exceptional events. They're out of our control. We all breathe it. We're impacted by it. Absolutely. But from drawing conclusions about, what is one area experiencing versus other, what's happening in other parts of Sacramento, we took the wildfire data out. So it wasn't, it's trying to compare apples to apples. And when you've got the wildfires going on, it sort of throws a lot of that analysis out the window.
And I do understand that, Mark, and thank you for that. I guess my concerns are around the fact that as a community, and I'm gonna tell you, I worked for the census for the better part of 2020, and we had many, many concerns because of wildfires. But if I take a look at the picture you're presenting here, and I tell people we pulled out the outlier, which for granted about 6 months out of that period, maybe 9 months out of that period was pretty bad. I take a look at that and it says, hey, this isn't so bad after all. So it might be kind of confusing to the community, and I'm just putting that out there. And if I'm making, if I'm not making sense, let me know.
Janice, are you going to pull up that other slide there? So Richard, we do have another slide that shows you what it would look like with the wildfires in there. So this is now with the wildfires. So you are right. You do see more unhealthy for sensitive groups. You do see unhealthy days. So this would be with those days in there. So you can see the impact. So there's no question the wildfires impacted. Absolutely. we're showing the other only so that as the community and the community is thinking about like next steps, where there is or isn't solutions to be looking for. Wildfires are a little bit outside, we'd all love to eliminate wildfires. But that may be a little bit beyond the scope of strategies that we have as a group versus trying to focus on what's impacting everyone on a day-to-day basis. But to your question, this is the data with the wildfires in. We actually had this one in the back pocket ready.
To Dr. Ayala's comment in the chat, data is data, evidence doesn't lie. So what is missing? I'm not really necessarily talking about the fact that something is missing. I'm talking about the perception of the community that we serve. Because we have to be able to explain this to the community that we serve. And so I ask the questions as part of this organization because I need to go back to that community I serve and be able to show them that we are a trustworthy body. And so that's kind of why I'm asking these questions.
No, can I interrupt for a moment? You have very valid issues, and we have to present the wildfire and what we do with that information as well. But we do need to be able to separate and find out what's happening with our car pollution and those other sources, and not just the wildfire smoke. So
Pat, I understand that completely. Yeah. Asking the questions so that I can understand.
Yes.
Because, so I appreciate that very, very much. Hope I'm not trying to be problematic. Forgive me if it appears that way. Just trying to understand so that I can explain.
Yeah. Well, I think Richard brings up, I think both are great points here. And I think maybe what we're hearing is both graphs are probably relevant so that everyone understands, hey, during the wildfires, there is a significant impact. But as we're looking for next steps, here's without the wildfires, but that way they see that there's both.
Please continue with the presentation. My apologies.
And not only during the wildfires, but during the pandemic, when it started, there was less travel and there was less smoke and the air was cleaner. So those things should kind of reflect in here somehow too, I think.
So you are absolutely right, Vincent. And I think that, I made this joke, and it's not really a joke, during one of the orientations that, the best way to clean up air quality sometimes is to do an air quality study. And so, what we're seeing is, there probably may have been some impact, we don't know. But what we also saw is, so the Air District is also doing a study on the shelter in place impacts on air quality. And so I think there's a lot of information that's out right now that a lot of people are still trying to understand. And I think this is going to be one of the things that we're going to have to think about or grapple with as we're doing the analysis for the data. But absolutely, that's something that, that did happen and it may have influenced it, but to what extent we're unclear about that right now. So with that, if there isn't any questions on that, I would ask maybe Stephen can go through some of the other information as well, and then pick up some more questions along the way.
Yep.
Sorry, let me go ahead and. All right.
So back to it. I mean, this may answer your question a little more, Richard, and just showing the overall air quality across the 2 years. This is on a daily average for the PM 2.5. And this obviously does have the fire impact. So Janice, if you want to click, it can highlight the fire periods that were directly impacted based on readings from our air quality team. So as you can see, 2020 was very highly impacted during this time, and the air quality did shoot up into the upper hundreds in terms of concentration. So, referring back to the previous slides, the wildfires did have a serious impact. But throughout the rest of the year, you can see where the priority areas trended. And that federal health standard of PM 2.5 at 35 is essentially the cutoff for unhealthy for sensitive groups or below. So you can see how many number of days were below that line, just to give you some perspective on that. I do also want to note that you can see how close some of these days trended to that line. You can see that during late fall through winter is where our PM 2.5 starts to tick up, which is consistent with what we expect based on weather trends and PM 2.5 generating activities, just like wood burning. So wintertime is when we expect it to start to uptick. And this is actually when basically every single unhealthy for sensitive groups or higher day was recorded, was during these winter periods. So this gives, I think, a broader picture. Maybe it would have been better for understanding to show this first so that you guys can understand the graphs that come after. But this is just, again, to highlight on a day-by-day basis how closely each of these areas tracked with each other, as well as tracking with the reference site at Del Paso Manor. Overall, there really is no area or site that was significantly different from one another. This is just to show that on a day-by-day basis.
Stephen, I'm sorry, Richard again.
Or go ahead, Richard.
I'm sorry, because you were talking about this is a reference for Del Paso Manor clarity. I'm presuming we have similar graphs for each of the monitors like this?
For every individual monitor?
Yes.
Yes, they were done. Again, they were all so similar to each other, and with 21 of them, it was just a rainbow of a mess. So it's easier just to summarize it like this.
Okay. Thank you for that. We'd like to take some time to research so that somebody could direct me to those in the future. Also noticing real interesting, and would love to dive into deeper at a different time. We see that wonderfully huge spike, of course, through what appears to be the August, September, October timeframe in 2020, yet we see that greatly reduced as far as outcomes for the same period in 2021. Going to be interesting to see where that lies within 2022.
So just, sorry, if you could see on that page for just one moment, Stephen. So
excuse me, I had a question.
Oh, sorry, please go ahead. I didn't see hands up.
I'm sorry, may I? Do we have this information for South Sacramento? Since we are right now looking at the data.
Yeah, so this actually is the South Sacramento. So this is actually 5 graphs on here at once. So this is the priority area 1, priority area 2, 3, and 4, which are the 21 monitors in South Sacramento, Florin, and the Del Paso Manor clarity. So this is actually just showing that all of the data is actually pretty much falling on top of each other, regardless of where the sensors are.
Gotcha.
And Richard, to your question there, those periods coincide with the wildfires. So we had some bigger impact so these gray areas where you see the spikes are the wildfires of 2020 and 2021.
Sure, that makes sense. It's just interesting more so than anything else to know that wildfires impacted us more on air quality in 2020 than it did in 2021. When we hear that wildfires were longer and larger during 2021 on that. It's just an interesting comparison from what we're being told, what the wildfire season was like for us. That's all.
Absolutely.
Alberto, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I wanna make a comment to follow up on what Mark said, to just kind of complete the picture, because I know our friends from United Latino are going to appreciate this. To Jesus' point, so this is South Sacramento, Florin, the 4 priority areas that the committee selected, and we are comparing it to the station in Del Paso Manor. The fact that you see the lines falling on top of each other is the point that we have made in the past, which is we have an understanding that air pollution in Sacramento is fairly regionally distributed. This is the reason why we have argued that you don't need a regulatory monitor in every corner, because we have understanding how air pollution is regionally distributed across our region. So this is one of the reasons that we have been arguing for that. That's not to say that you cannot have one if you want it, if you have the resources, what have you, but there is understanding in terms of how the air pollution in a region like Sacramento gets distributed. And there are some very fundamental physical reasons for that being the case. Richard and United Latinos, if you guys want the same reference to the other 21 graphs as Steve pointed out to, we'd be more than happy to make those available to you.
And I understand where you're coming from on there, and understand for me, because in the conversation you and I had over coffee, I understand the information shows from a regional standpoint that things are pretty much the same regionally, and the trends are pretty much the same regionally. And that's great to be able to know that and to be able to say that. And go ahead.
I'm sorry, gentlemen. It just in the interest of time, we have to let this presentation move forward.
Very
because
good.
We have a major discussion to have. And I think that this is important. Right now, it doesn't sound like we're in disagreement. We recognize what's on here. Let's get the rest of this data so that we can come back and have a fuller discussion at the end.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much, Pat.
Okay, well, to get back to it, that was what we had for phase one. Just to give you, again, a quick look at the sites and the priority areas compared to each other. So as Alberto kind of summarized there, the sites and priority areas and the greater Sacramento region itself all had similar results to each other. There really was no site or area that was significantly higher than one another, and regionally it was very consistent. As you saw in the previous graph, the wildfires have enormous impact on our air quality. They're not to be taken lightly, and PM2.5 definitely spikes during this time. One of the big trends to see during seasonality is that PM2.5 was higher during the late fall to winter period, which is consistent with what we'd expect, and you'll see it later on in the presentation as well. So overall, this is consistent with what was shown in the past for phase one, and as phase one goes on, we'll see if this continues.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. So to move on to phase two, as Janice said, phase two is complete. It looked at August of 2020 through November 2021. So I'll be covering the first portion of this, looking at particulate matter and its kind of subcomponents, and then we'll be handing it off to my colleague, Stephen De Andrea, to finish it off with the gaseous compounds portion. Just for quick reference, here again is our phase two sites, all 6 of them labeled along with the names on the right for anyone who needs a quick refresher, spread throughout our priority areas and throughout the community, just to give us a full community picture and allow us to compare priority areas to each other. This is just a quick overview of what we looked at in phase two. As I said, we looked at particulate matter and its subcomponents, more specifically a large array of toxic metals along with black carbon. And we also looked at a large array of toxic gases or volatile organic compounds, also shorthanded as VOCs, which you'll hear from now on. So the purpose of phase two, obviously following phase one, is just to offer more enhanced and advanced screening throughout the area. We're allowed to look at individual compounds and components during this phase, which is great for screening and allow us to identify any specific compounds that might be significantly higher in certain sites or areas, and can really help us determine what kind of general sources might be contributing to pollution in the area. So this phase was particularly important moving into phase three. Just for a quick, touch back on this graphic we showed earlier before we're looking specifically at just the pink particles, but we can turn our attention now to the graphic on the right. We're looking at the subcomponents of PM2.5, which is the many toxic metals that make it up, along with black carbon. All right, so to begin, PM2.5 and the toxic metals were taken in the same measuring device. So we'll be looking at those two in conjunction with each other. So we analyzed for 48 different toxic metals. And again, we measured for total PM2.5. And we did this to offer a different methodology for measuring PM2.5 outside of phase 1. And the phase 2 monitors are more advanced. So hopefully it'll give us a more accurate screening of PM2.5 and can allow us to compare the results between phase 1 and phase 2 to help validate each other. In terms of measuring, samples were collected every 6 days. So we had a total of 79 over that measuring period between August and November 2021. And for the toxic metals, just like PM, they can come from a large variety of sources, with just some common examples being combustion. So the metals can come from diesel trucks or any type of metal processing or metal work, for example, welding, which a quick picture on the right can show you in case you can't visualize it. So this is the daily PM 2.5 for phase 2. So to follow phase 1, here's what it looks like in phase 2. Janice, if you want to click again, we did highlight the fires to show you how it impacted. And to Richard's point, you can see the drastic drop in 2021 compared to 2020 in this one as well. So rather consistent with phase 1, you can see that the phase 2 sites were all very similar to each other beyond some exceptional events. You can see Sump 50 and Impact Church having spikes. It should be noted that these exceptional events are expected. It can be anything as small as someone smoking near the monitor, having a barbecue, 4th of July fireworks, anything like that can cause these to spikes over the day. So these are to be expected, and it's more the long-term measuring long-term concentration that is really concerning to us, because this is the day-to-day air that we breathe. So as I said, the sites are rather similar to each other. For the most part, they trended below that 24-hour federal health standard. Similar to phase 1, you can see that outside of the fire regions, the concentrations were highest during that late fall through winter period. So start of November, late October through February is where PM 2.5 was seen to be the highest, which is rather consistent with what we expect. So all in all, phase 2 PM 2.5 is consistent and rather agreeable with phase 1, and just kind of confirms our understanding of the community having a general relative concentration and no real priority area standing out. So moving on to metals themselves, like I said, we had 48 that we measured. All 48 were compared averages to each site, and we also compared them to state averages where a state average was available, provided by CARB's website. If you look on the right, there were 14 metals in our study that were recognized by EPA as being a part of toxic emissions from mobile sources. And along with that, the 14 on the right are also known to have an inhalation reference dose and or known probable or possible carcinogens, meaning that the EPA kind of recognizes these as being more toxic or risky than the other ones on the list. And so we wanted to pay particular attention to these. On the following graph, we will be using the elemental symbols. So if you want to take a quick look at the names, just to give your mind a refresher as to what you might be looking at in the next slide. I also do want to point out, sorry, Janice, to go back. Although I do say these 14 are from mobile sources, that does not mean they are solely from mobile sources. Mobile sources are just one component of the sources that can make up any one of these. Like I said, they can come from combustion of any type of fuel, from dust, wear and tear from any type of material. So there's very many sources where these can come from, but we wanted to recognize these mobile sources as one of the concerns of the community is the freeway, traffic related pollution. So it felt right to focus on these 14 as they do fall in line with the concerns of the camp. So here we have the averages over the course of the measuring period for the 14 metals that I showed on the previous slide. As you can see, we have each site measured out along with the state average in the gray bar. And I do want to point out that the state averages for barium and for mercury, they did not take any measurements past 2003. So those ones are state averages back from 2000, 2003. Those are the ones that they can compare to. But all in all, if you compare the sites to each other, for the most part, they are all similar to each other. There are a few where the sites differ a little bit. You can see that in barium, you can see that in manganese. But for the most part, each site is rather comparable to each other. If you compare the sites to state averages, again, for the most part, they're either similar or well below the state averages. There are two that I want to point out that are above. You can see cadmium and antimony did measure above the state averages. As of right now, we don't know of any sources or causes of this, but we did take a look at how they compare to any toxic or carcinogenic limits, which they are well below those, and they're also well below any EPA listed ambient average for those as well. So as of right now, we do recognize they're above the state averages, but they aren't at any toxic or concerning level, but we have noted them. As we move into phase 3, we'll continue to look at them. So just kind of sum up the toxic metals and the PM 2.5 that we looked at. As you can see, all the sites had very similar levels to PM 2.5. And for most of the metals, there were a few that they differed, but they are close to each other. And as I said on the previous slide, most of the metals were similar or below, with a few exceptions. For the state averages, only 30 of the metals had averages that we can even compare to. But again, most of them were below, with the exception of the few that we saw on the previous slide. I think Earl has a question.
I noticed in the toxic metals data that some of the data is reported as PM 2.5 and some is reported as PM 10. Did you change inlets on the instruments at some time during the monitoring period, or co-locate a 2.5 monitor with a filter-based 10 monitor?
No. So we actually have monitor or samples for both PM 2.5 as well as PM 10. And what we currently have right now in terms of analysis is that we've completed the PM 2.5. We'll be going through the PM 10 as well.
A second question, my recollection, and I haven't looked at this at the CARB site recently, is that CARB maintains something like 13 toxic monitoring stations in the state. Those are located in areas that were anticipated to have very high emissions of toxic pollutants. Have you done any comparison between the emission density of some of those elements or constituents of the toxic group between the South Sacramento Florin area and the sites in urban Los Angeles, Bay Area, et cetera, to determine how representative this area is of the state compared to the state average of these high sites?
So at this point, we haven't done any further analysis in terms of comparing it to different similar areas yet, but that's certainly something that we could look at in the future. But certainly we use the state average as the first cut.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I would just add real quickly to that, early, it could be a great thing if the committee has an interest in us diving into that in the future. Since those would be even potentially higher than the statewide average, I think we would probably see just even then the comparison would be even lower. So that'd be a good thing. So I think, the statewide average is probably lower than those high sites. And since we're, at or well below a lot of the state averages already, I would imagine we would be even lower in comparison to the worst areas.
Well, the 13 sites that are in the state average are the worst sites in the state, or at least they were designed to put monitors in what was believed to be the worst sites in the state. Anyway, thank you.
With that, I think what we're going to do is that we're going to turn it over to Stephen DeAndrea to
Still black carbon, Janice.
Oh, sorry. Still black carbon. All right, we're still going through black carbon. Let's get through that quickly. Okay, Stephen?
Yeah, I'll try and brush through this a little quicker then. So black carbon measured over the same measuring period, so August to November. The measurings was different. These were hourly measurements through that period. Like toxic metals, black carbon is part of PM 2.5, so it itself does not have a national standard, but it should be noted that it is a strong climate pollutant. So, beyond just local community health, it is a global pollutant as well. I think it's something that everyone's familiar with. It primarily comes from incomplete combustion. So just some common sources being wood burning, coming out of fireplaces, wildfires, or anything traffic related, with diesel engines being the most significant and something you've all probably visually seen on the road.
I have a question for that slide, for that information. So do the stationary sources, so like my central heating and air, my heater was running 24 hours a day in the winter this year because it was so cold. Does that impact the black carbon readings?
Sorry, what were you running through that period?
Well, we're attributing the wildfires and wood burning in the wintertime to the black carbon. Does our central heating and air units and stationary sources, like the plants that fire up their heaters all winter long, does that impact the black carbon reading?
Let me take this one, Stephen. I'm going to answer this question, Vincent. Any type of combustion of a fossil fuel is likely going to generate some form of particle pollution that could be black carbon. I think what you see is some combustion, like diesel combustion, is much more prominent in the black carbon signature than something like a water heater that is running on natural gas. So when in doubt, it's better to think that combustion is likely going to generate some form of particle pollution. It's just how much of an issue is from one source versus the other. So I don't know if you want to add anything else, Stephen, here.
No, I would just said the same thing. Combustion is where it comes from. There's no doubt that it would come from that, but how significant of a source is it compared to the others? I don't think we can say at this point, but it's something to keep in mind.
I mean, we're lucky in California in general and in Sacramento, because if you were to pick two fuels, certainly diesel combustion is gonna, or coal, for example, in our power plants, is gonna give you much more black carbon than something like natural gas. But that is not to say that you don't get anything out of natural gas either. So hopefully that helps, Vincent.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so just to put things into context, for this first slide, as I mentioned, black carbon is a part of the total PM 2.5 seen in the area. So we just wanted to use these next few animations to kind of give you perspective as to the portion of black carbon in terms of total PM 2.5. So if you can see on the bottom, we have the average over all sites for black carbon over this period on a weekly basis. We also have our monitoring site of Bearcut, which is our NERO monitoring site located next to I-5 north of Sacramento. And again, we have a regional PM 2.5 site at Del Paso Manor. So just looking at those three themselves, you can see that they track very similar to each other over the period. And what Janice just put in is our total average over all 21 clarities, actually 19, taking out the two that weren't working. So 19 clarity averages of our PM 2.5 over the same time period. And Janice, if you want to click one more time, we can even highlight where the fires were during this period. And again, this is mostly just to put into perspective the portion that black carbon makes up of total PM 2.5. So as you can see, it is just a small fraction of it. This is not to say that it's not a problem. It's just to show that black carbon itself isn't contributing to a lot of the total PM 2.5, especially during let's say the winter times. You can see November through February. It is during its highest, but it is not a significant contributor during that period. So one thing to note, Janice, if you actually want to take away what you can go forward to. And then if you want to click twice, I do want to note the y-axis has changed. So I know that you can see that they're going towards the top of the graph now. But again, the axis has changed. We're not looking at an axis of 70, we're looking at 8. So again, these black carbon readings are a small fraction and are micrograms. With the highest being during the fires, you can see them occurring at the beginning of August going through October, which we saw on both points of the year. All 6 sites, although they look a little separated at points, are running very similar to each other. They all tracking and trending similar to each other. I do want to again point out the scale. So although there may be a gap between the two, that gap is about 1 microgram. So the concentration itself isn't varying a lot. You can see that station 56 is running the highest out of all of them. and is a little more similar to our Bearcut site, with both those stations being near a freeway. This is pretty consistent with what we'd expect. So overall black carbon, again, similar to the PM 2.5, tracks very similar to one another. And you can see that it is highest during the winter, during that October through February period, which is what we'd expect, as it does track similar to PM 2.5 and will increase as black carbon generating activities increase, like people firing up their wood burning. So let's move on to the next one. So shown here is just giving you a look at 24-hour trends. So you can see hour by hour how the black carbon will cycle throughout the day. Just to know, we are only looking at that winter period when it was highest, October through February, as that is when, again, the black carbon is highest. And we want to see if there's any cycle that we can see during this high period. So, I mean, as you can see visually, there is a cycle during this period. Again, the y-axis has changed. It is only at 3 now. So again, even though there is gaps between them, please note that they are only fractions of a microgram apart at this point, or microgram total. So one thing to note, I kind of highlighted the parts where it peaks. You can see that it does tend to rise a little in the morning, between 6 and 8 a.m., which would correspond to morning traffic. And to Vincent's point, again, you have any type of combustion during this, it's going to put out black carbon. It's going to start to peak. It'll dip off during the day. And you can see it start to rise around 4 to 5 p.m., 6 p.m. as evening traffic starts, the day starts to cool, and peaks around 8 to 10 p.m., which is rather consistent with wood burning during this winter period. So this is just to show you how it'll cycle during this winter time, and to give you a look at how activities can influence this. One thing to note, I guess I can say it on the next slide, but you can see the community average kind of falls right in between our 2 regulatory sites, and Station 56 being right above it. So overall, the community average is falling right in between, and being very similar to the overall Sacramento area, which is consistent with what we saw for the PM 2.5. And overall, the 24-hour cycle is pretty consistent with residential wood smoke, peaking at the times that it does. And similar to the metals, I do want to note that Station 56 was the highest. It was comparable to our regional monitors, but it was higher than the other 5 sites, which really isn't a change from previous results that we saw, which identified Station 56 as our highest site for black carbon. And yes.
Where are your other sites that measure black carbon outside of this study area?
The 2 that I listed, we have Bearcut and Del Paso Manor.
Oh, okay. So you have black carbon monitoring at Bearcut and Del Paso?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right, with that, if there isn't any other questions, maybe we can hold them until the end. Stephen, I'm going to pass it on to Stephen DeAndrea to share some more information about the gaseous components of our phase 2.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. Thank you, Stephen. So yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen DeAndrea. I'm the district statistician. And I think for some of you that have been on this committee for a little while, you may remember me from previous presentations many moons ago. So it's nice to see a few familiar faces here and some new ones as well. So today I'm going to talk about the VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, portion of the phase 2 monitoring. So this slide may be familiar to some of you, but first I'd just like to recap some of the health effects that could occur from exposure to VOCs, and just some of the examples of some of the more well-known VOCs. So there are short-term and long-term symptoms from VOC exposure. I've included a few of them here on the left of this slide, and some common examples of VOCs that can be seen on the right-hand side of this slide. So benzene may be the most common. I know that seems to be more of the common VOC that you hear more frequently. And it can be emitted from gas stations and cigarettes, for example. And then a couple other ones. Methylene chloride is common in hairspray and paint strippers, and xylene can be found in paints, inks, and adhesives. So the phase 2 monitoring of VOCs followed an industry standard method where we used metal canisters to collect the ambient air and then send them off to a laboratory for analysis. So picture on the right is one of the canisters that we used, as well as one of the stations. So this one here specifically is the Cosumnes River College site. During the phase 2 monitoring, we analyzed for 125 different VOC pollutants from 330 total samples collected on 70 separate sample days. So the sampling occurred from August of 2020 right through November of 2021. And as Stephen discussed earlier in this presentation, there were some smoke impacts on the samples during the wildfires that took place in the fall of 2020. So for each of the 6 sites, we calculated the highest average concentrations for each of the 125 pollutants. So from an earlier analysis presented to the steering committee, the 2 highest sites for VOCs were found to be VFW Post in Priority Area 1 and Impact Church in Priority Area 2. This analysis has been updated to include all of the VOC data now from phase 2 complete. So out of the 125 different VOC species that were analyzed, 21 of these pollutants were identified by EPA to be found in urban areas or emitted from mobile sources. So these 21 VOCs, we were used in this analysis as priority VOCs throughout this. So to put the concentrations of these priority VOCs into context, they were compared to California state averages, similar to what Stephen mentioned earlier. For this presentation, the average of all 6 phase 2 sites within the South Sacramento Florin community was calculated and then compared to the average statewide concentration over the most recently available data, which was 2015 to 2019. So what is shown in the table on the right are the VOC species that had comparable data in the state database. So the first 2 columns of numbers that you can see there are the averages for the South Sacramento Florin community and statewide. And the third column of numbers shows the South Sacramento Florin community concentration as a percentage of the statewide average. So for example, if the community is equal to the state average, this would be 100%. If the community was half of the statewide average, this would be 50%. So what was found for all the priority VOCs is that all the concentrations in the South Sacramento Florin community are less than the state average. So overall, when analyzed the highest average concentrations of the priority VOCs for each of the 6 sites, it was found that the highest sites remain the same as previously presented. VFW Post in Area 1 and Impact Church in Area 2. So this slide shows the overall summary of the results from phase 1 and phase 2 data. So it was found that all phase 1 PM2.5 sites showed similar concentrations. Station 56 was the highest site for black carbon. VFW Post was the highest for phase 2 PM2.5 metals and VOCs. And Impact Church was also high for VOCs. So overall, the monitoring showed that the community levels for most of the measured pollutants were similar to or less than the averages for the region or the state. So it was also shown that the data continues to support Priority Area 1 as a location for the phase 3 monitoring, as Mark discussed a little bit earlier. Although the data in Priority Area 1 is slightly higher, it was found that the overall levels across all sites were similar. So this all indicates that the phase 3 location will provide good community-wide information to the community. So now I'd just like to pass you back to Janice just to quickly finish up this portion of the presentation.
All right, that was a lot of information. Thank you, Stephen and Stephen. I just want to round our discussion with something you saw earlier in the presentation in terms of where we are in terms of timeline. So, like we discussed, we're moving from phase 1, we've completed phase 2 during last winter, and now we're moving into phase 3, which is the mobile laboratory. We're continuing to do more analysis on the data. And ultimately, I know that we're all eager to determine, what type of strategies are we going to develop to start, to continue to reduce emissions in the South Sacramento community. So I just wanted to round that off with our discussion, and we're happy to answer any questions now or later. So you have my email, And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Bill and Pat. Hi, Bill and Pat. Both of you are either on mute.
Hello.
There you are.
All right. Okay, we are in quite a bit of a situation. How much time do we have left on this now?
We have 12 minutes till 8 o'clock.
Okay. All right. I would say let's just finish the discussion about what we've seen. If there are any other questions about that, because I don't see that we can get into the deeper piece of discussion in the meeting tonight. We can intro it and start it in the interceding meetings to kind of come back. I'm not quite sure. Let's just go through and ask folks, what do they think now that we're hearing this? Where does this put us? Where do we think that we want to go? This is a bit of education and knowledge now that we've had. Bill and I have talked about, and we've kind of have an outline, but I'm not wanting to be so directive as to not hear what you are wanting to say or wanting to do. So I'm withholding that slide from trying to go through and say, this is how I want to try to approach going into our next phase. What are the thoughts of the members from what we've heard and where we think this is taking us?
Well, I'll start it off. So first, and just in reference to what you just said, if we all could have saw the slide before the meeting, we would be informed and be able to together make a decision prior to on the spot right now. Tell you, well, what do we do next? So I can just tell you right now that I've met with the SMUD board member, and they're asking how we can do outreach in the community to transition to from gasoline lawnmowers, the industry, the landscaping industry. And we talked about this, a year and a half ago, but so that's just one thing now SMUD is asking, because they're going into their carbon free by 2030. And so they're looking for resources in the community, and we're one of those resources. And so that is just one of the just things just to put out there. I mean, SMUD is looking to remove some of these sources of pollution any way they can. And that's just one large industry that hasn't really grasped going green yet. And so that's just something to talk about. And maybe at our workshop or outreach event that we have upcoming, we can include something like that as well.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Vincent. Anyone else?
I think it's pretty complex. I mean, the information that we just looked at is very interesting. And I believe that we need a little more time as a group to kind of put our heads together and to see exactly where we want to go and to kind of give ideas how we can tackle this problem, if you will. So I'm proposing that maybe the subcommittee to have another meeting among us and to discuss exactly what are the options that we have and what way we want to go. Because in 10 or 15 minutes, I don't believe that it's going to be enough time to kind of come up to a conclusion. That's my 2 cents.
We also need to leave time for public comments too, don't we?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think we should go to that and make another time to talk about this to make a decision of what direction we're going in.
Yeah, because personally, I believe that, I mean, I would like to kind of see this information more in detail myself to digest all the information that I get, because it's a very good information, but I need to look at it carefully, digest, and to have a good idea exactly what I can propose.
I could tell you one other thing that I was thinking when I was looking at the reports. Station 56 showed the highest amount of black carbon. And just because I know the neighborhood, there aren't a lot of houses around there. So I couldn't really grasp how the wood burning was affecting the black carbon in there. But now that I think about it, they're upwind from all the diesel truck yards over there. So maybe in the winter, those trucks are burning and we're getting it into that. So it was very good to see the locations and to kind of talk about it and get a little more, because I kept trying to figure out, well, why does it have the highest black carbon when it has the least amount of houses around there? But it does have a lot of trucking industry in that area, a lot.
Yes.
And how we can get those trucks and those yards electrified so they don't have to run diesel to keep warm, I don't know, but that was another discussion we had a year and a half ago as well.
This is Richard Falcone. I'll chime in very briefly. I'm looking forward to future discussions. Be happy to sit down, Dr. Ayala, as I stated, and in there, perception is reality to people. When you show me the data that you show me and the way that you show me, it appears that besides wildfires, we've got no problems. So what are y'all talking about? Okay, so we have to make sure that organizations like United Latinos and other understand exactly what it is we are looking at, because if we are going to be your allies to the community in order to establish the trust that you are looking for, we're going to have a lot of questions for you.
Right.
And it's not going to be just questions about data. It's going to be questions about heart, about soul, and about the mindset of the people.
Yes.
And how you break down that data so that they can understand it is going to be key to your success as an organization. And along with that, now you've shown me all the data, but now let's talk about what are the solutions? What are the mitigation strategies that we have to put in place for our community so that they can live healthier lives?
That's exactly where we need to go in that discussion, because what our community members are going through are real life health impacts with that are related to the environment, the air, and yes, it's complex, but yes, what are our strategies? And we have to come up with strategies, because it does not look like money is going to be falling from the sky for us. So then where are the partnerships? Where are those linkages? As Vincent said, where do we work with SMUD? How do we do those things? Janice, in the interest of time, could you pull the slide forward that I had asked for?
Yes, the one, not the one with the
about process that we're talking about, some of the things, because I think Richard has touched on how we need to. It's not simply a matter of having the information, as Richard said. How do we get the education? How do we build the partnerships? How do we brainstorm, sort, prioritize? Where do we have to get this doled out for deep dives in our different subcommittees to be able to get to, a practical, applicable, relevant action that has a basis of trust built into it, because our community is not going to automatically trust just because it's said. But what are we doing? So I'm just saying there are complex pieces and deep discussions that we have to have, and those are happening in between these quarter sessions. We can't wait to have this conversation 3 months from now. We need to be having this conversation next month and the next month. And that's part of why in next month's, we've also invited people who are already in the battle such as SNAC and such as Valley Vision and such as some of the others, and United Latinos, to say, what are you doing? Where are you in your lane? How do we find our part, and not trying to replicate, but find how we add to and help move us down the road to a healthier community.
Mhm.
So this is, we can't do this in 10 minutes.
No.
So it can come down now. It was just some ideas.
Just some thoughts we had.
Yeah. So any other comment from the community? Adrian, Earl, what are your thoughts or recommendations?
Pat, maybe while they're unmuting, you did also have Spencer had his hand up a moment ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that, Spencer. Spencer, go right ahead.
I just wanted to say this was a lot of information intake, and I appreciate it being sent before this presentation, but it was still a lot to go in to. But I feel like now that we have, I think phase 2 really showed a lot that phase 1 set us up for, but the only way that this committee or anything's going to move because of the limited resources is what you're saying, Pat, is how are we going to figure out the partnerships that we make, or Vincent with SMUT. But the idea is that this steering committee is now representative of a voice of a people that weren't necessarily being able to express, anyway, I'm not articulating it correctly. So I think that, but there is going to be a point, and I hope public health orders relax something, that a brainstorming session or a session where we meet in person, because that kind of collaboration that we're talking about just doesn't work over Zoom. It takes, one time, maybe if it's a special meeting outside our regular, or we devote that entire meeting to that, or something like that, is what I'm going to recommend, because now that we have the information and we can see, we got to synthesize all of the things that we think people are going to be able to use this tools, and how we're going to take it to policymakers, stakeholders, people who have the money.
Correct.
And how we're going to do that. And I agree that that's going to take some time, but I think that's going to need an in-person at some point brainstorm to talk about.
And I agree with you, Spencer. One of the things, as we're moving into this new world and kind of out of where we've been under the COVID constraints, there may be more willingness for us to be able to do that. I mean, I don't want to I love you people, but I don't want to sit with you in a closet, right? And for us necessarily to breathe each other's air like that. But I think that, a space can be found that can be comfortable and conducive to that session, that type of brainstorming session, and that relationship building and resources that we all know or have can start to happen.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Having said that, some of the things that I've been involved with, we've been meeting at venues that are large, outside.
Yes.
How many people are we talking about?
We're talking about a steering committee. And
okay,
then
it sounds simple enough to find an outdoor venue that would accommodate us. And one that quickly comes to mind is Outback in Roseville. They have this huge porch. I had a meeting with 50 people on that porch, and it's right outside, airflow. I mean, so there, even if we don't go to Roseville, I'm simply saying there's so many places where, sometimes you do need to meet in person. We need to get over it. Those who aren't comfortable can wear masks. I agree. You know, Zoom is wonderful, but Zoom is difficult
Yes,
at times, particularly for the intricacies we're talking about here.
right.
So, in
any
other words, I'm open, and if we
Okay.
need help planning such an outing, I'll be happy to do it. Or
Right.
work with people who want to.
All right. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Lisa.
Lisa. Glad to hear it. Any other comments? Earl, you have a comment. Adrian, you have a comment for things that you've experienced or understand.
I've been spending time looking at the interrelationship of the toxic metal data element by element. And I had neglected to realize that you had black carbon data posted on your website. My preference is to spend some more time diving more deeply into that data and looking for relationships, especially spatial relationships. One of the objectives originally of the committee, I think, was to determine whether there are any hotspots in the community. And I think that staff has presented information to suggest, and rightfully so, that for many pollutants, the levels are pretty uniform across the community. That being said, we also know that diesel particulate constitutes 60% of the cancer risk of the air that we breathe in any urban area in Sacramento. Reduction of diesel particulate exposures, I think, should be a priority, and even without doing any further analysis of data, I have to say that part of the work that I've been doing recently for United Latinos is to look at lead concentrations near Sacramento Airport, the largest source of lead emissions in the community. And we're about to set up another filter monitor there to collect data, filter data that'll be analyzed for toxic metals. Not sure what we'll find, but otherwise, I don't have any immediate words of wisdom for you tonight, but thank you for asking.
Thank you so much, Earl. Adrian, do you have any advice or any thoughts about what we've said?
Well, I'm eating dinner, but I put it in chat, so check that out.
Okay, Adrian. Any other comments from community members or board members?
I have a comment.
Yes.
This is Rhonda. I have to agree with Richard Falcon. We have to find a way to present this complex data to the community in a way that they understand it in layman's terms. I mean, and at my first take of looking at this was, then how did our area get, how was it determined that we had poor air quality? Because everything looked like it was fine outside the fire. So that kind of perplexed me while you were going through the slides.
Well, I guess my perception is I didn't see that everything's okay. I do see that we have unhealthy and sensitive folks. Those are our children. Those are our elderly people. Those are our pregnant.
I get that.
Outdoor workers. Those are our athletes.
I get that, but the level of exposure looked like it was low on the charts, you know.
Relatively days that we're all over. We don't have a smoking gun. We've got a million smoking tailpipes. That's what we've got, right? And we're soaking and we're smoking it in. I'm just saying it as a person who's seen my own health get jeopardized and start to fail because of it. And looking around at my neighbors who had children hospitalized because of asthma and other things. So yes, we're not living in a plastic bag full of arsenic, but we are in deep trouble. But the way in may be about how you start the discussion, because we're getting more and more days of hazardous particulate matter due to fires. And it sucks into our valley, and we know we're at high risk, and this cycle is not going to change. So that may be the door in to this discussion, in this general discussion at a community level, because almost all of us are barking and coughing and crying when that smoke overwhelms us. And the issue about you know, the fireplaces and what happens when that inversion layer is holding that smoke in the winter. We got to meet people where their interests are. And maybe that is where, hey, my kid is missing 10 days of school because of asthma. My mother was hospitalized because she had an asthma attack when she tried to go out for a walk, right? We got to meet people where they are. And the data helps us be able to educate, but we still have to talk about that's it. So that's we need to be able to I think be able to meet to the level of comfort, but a place that's large enough and comfortable enough. I know, you know, I shop for the groceries in my house. You know, I'm getting out in the world, and I wear my mask still because I'm a 3-level at-risk person. But this is important. But part of this is that relationship building that we can benefit from meeting face to face to do some of the brainstorming, because there are no dumb questions, and there's no idea that doesn't have validity. It's what can we do? What are the partnerships that we can build? And we've got to be able to move this ball down the field. Otherwise, we're dead in the water.
Well, tell you what, let me know when everyone's ready. I'll get it all set up.
Okay, girl.
Thank you, Lisa.
No problem at all.
All right. I hate to tell you this, but our time now is 8:10. And we will continue this discussion and our agenda. We have guest speakers at next month's meeting. Adrian Wren with Valley Vision and SNAC will be one of those, but we will continue this discussion. Vincent's saying, did you remember it was Earth Day? What was that? Yeah, that was this week.
Yesterday or the day before, wasn't it?
Yes, day before yesterday, I think.
Mhm.
So anyway, but there's a lot to absorb, but the importance of us moving this information and making it digestible and real and relevant is so important. So everybody's voice and everybody's effort here is going to be critical to doing that, along with the agencies that have control and dollars to be able to assist with this, because I don't see dollars falling from the sky for South Sacramento flooring. So
No, and
how do
Pat,
we
one thing I do want to add for all of us
yes,
is no matter what, we have to make sure with our communities, we are expressing and keeping their hopes up for a solution.
absolutely.
Whether it's not in this generation, but maybe a generation down, we have to communicate that there is hope because
Absolutely.
of everybody that's in this room.
I just being able to know what I can do, if I can put a box fan filter together that helps me be able to help my air inside my home for my mother or my brother, that gives me hope. It gives me something I can do, you know, and that's the willingness. You're absolutely right. It can't be doom. We cannot sell doom and gloom. Nobody's buying that mess. Nobody wants it.
I think just by virtue of the fact that we're all on this committee is hopeful. We're all working towards greater good.
Exactly. So with that, do we have any other closing thoughts, Bill? Just a quick, Vincent, you want to mention the letter?
Yes. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody who participated in the email blast. What we did learn is we got to get better at getting a hold of everybody. Thank you, Marina, for giving us everybody's emails on that our contact list. And so it's our first letter of support, and it took a little bit of effort, a little bit of time. I mean, it was short notice. Thank you, Adrian, for the short notice, but we were able to do it. And those are the kind of ways we can impact the community, and also in the future, letters of support for funding from CARB, for flexibility on using some of the resources that are already given to us to impact the community. And so just saying that, I'm really proud of the community, the committee for coming together and getting our first letter of support. We've talked about this again for a year and a half as well. So now that we got one going, we're going to work on it with Rhonda, our leader on outreach, to make it easier and faster next time. Thanks, everyone.
One last thing, if anybody wants to stick around and get a sneak preview of the website, I'll be here.
Mark, you had a thought?
Mine's actually a real quick one. I think that Pat and Bill, you already covered, sort of addressed this, but I just want to make sure, was there anything else from the public that wasn't on the agenda? I just want to make sure we don't end up cutting out an opportunity for anything not on the agenda for the general public before we wrap up.
Thank you for that, Mark. Anyone needing to put an item out that we didn't get to touch on? All right, folks, we need all of you, not just at the quarterly meetings, but the real work is happening and the real deep discussions are happening at our intersession that are happening between the quarterly meetings as a committee. So we need to see you same time, fourth Tuesday of the month. So at 6 p.m. we're still here, okay, for that, and we'll be working on getting the brainstorm session and get that connection going, okay? Miss Lisa, you're going to be recruited.
Yay!
Task, okay?
I'm ready.
All right. Any other things? Bill, I'll let you wrap.
As always, these discussions are not easy, and they're not always glamorous, and there are times where we think that we're not making progress, and I think all of us on this call, are here to be of service. And so there's a lot of work to be done. The Calvary's not coming, the Calvary's us. And that's just a reality for communities like ours. And so we, our commitment is, Pat, and my commitment certainly to you is to keep going down this road with you. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are things that we can do and figuring out the right collaboration to get our message across. So again, thank you for your time and all of your efforts.
All right, could we give a quick share of Rhonda's screen? Those of you who are ready to sign off, go ahead and log off. Let Rhonda be able to share her screen if you want to take a quick perusal of the website that's coming.
Can you see it?
Yes. Nice.
This over here will be a live reading of air quality. Who we are. I asked them to be diverse in the types of pictures, all ethnicities and ages and so forth. This is like kind of shows that we're talking about South Sacramento.
There you go.
Upcoming events. So we have our quarterly meetings, and you click there, and it gives you all the dates and things, virtual meetings, and then our community engagement meetings, and then upcoming steering committee meetings. Explanations about, the AB 617 for people who don't know. This is a dummy here, but we want to put behind here, how can they get involved? How can we engage them to get involved with this efforts that we're going through?
We're also wanting to have another page as well that also gets information out about, we're not alone, but there are other things going on in the community.
Well, we have resources. We have services here. We have events. So all across here, we have projects. I'm looking for writers, as I said before, and we'll have FAQs. And then Vince, I need to talk to you because I want to know what monitoring link that you wanted to put on here.
What I also want to remind people, when we went to this Sat Clean Air moniker for ourselves and our URL, it's because we realize it's not just South Sacramento. It's Sacramento. We're all in this. And so that's one of the things. So it's not just us.
Okay.
So we've had the opportunity for the platform to expand to other community efforts.
So do you want to change this visual here?
No,
No.
that's it.
No.
We're hosting it, and we're bringing the news from all over.
That's right.
Okay.
What's
Okay.
happening in Sacramento communities.
So that's the sneak preview. Every day he sends me updates. So
Very nice, very soft. It's welcoming.
okay, that's what we wanted. That was one of the goals, to be welcoming, engaging.
Yes. Very, very nice, Rhonda. Outstanding.
Our slogan might be in one of these messages scrolling across the screen. I don't know yet. So
Very nice.
Okay, so that's it.
Beautiful.
All right, folks.
All right.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Thank
All
you.
Good night. And Gary, thank you once again. And happy retirement
you.
to other activities.
I will keep in touch. I'll pop
All right,
in.
guys. I
All
gotta
right.
get out of here.
All
All right.
right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, buddy.
All right. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.